Okay, so today I'm going to be speaking to you about technology and sexualisation of children. Carl has overestimated my skills, so please don't expect the miracle that he's setting up for. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the rise of media technology. So if you consider where our, parents, grandparents and great-grandparents were in relation to access to these types of materials as opposed to where we are, there's a huge amount of difference. So if we look at 1936, we had the first electronic gramophone. And then we have just progressed until the 1980s where we had CD-ROMs, compact discs. We had electronic pinball machines. So we had non-electronic pinball machines earlier than 1933, but we had the electronic ones come in 1933. These went to coin-operated game consoles, to home game consoles. Anybody that's as old as me will remember those little white sticks that you had the ping pong where you just flicked the square ball back between the sticks. And now, of course, we have a variety of video games available on your television, on your computer, internet, even on your handphones. We saw the rise of home computers in 1977. And by the 1990s, home computers were rare, but they were common in businesses. So that's when our businesses started adopting computer technology and using that. In the 2000s, home computers became common to the degree that most households now have 4+ computers or laptops in their homes. Internet technologies rose in the 1950s, but was designed for the Defence Force. In 1981, it was expanded for the use of academics. 1989 saw the rise of commercial use over the internet, and in 1991, the World Wide Web became public. That has had huge changes and implications in relation to exposure to technology, and in particular children. The Motorola mobile phone was invented in 1983, which used to be like a giant brick that you carried around in a bag, to what we have now as the iPhone. And of course, we had the digital camera in the late 1980s. So what is the difference between old technology and digital technology? Well, basically, new technology gives us access to the world. We do not need to leave our homes to be able to access a ton of information, different people, and different environments. There are lots of benefits to media technology. I'm not anti-media technology. There certainly can be used for education. They can certainly be used for learning about their world. So I'm thinking about children here. So they can be quite educational for children, and it can help them learn about their world. It can help them keep in touch with their loved ones. With modernisation, no longer are we families all growing up and living in the same suburb where we're only a walk away from one another. We move interstate, internationally. So technology gives us the opportunity to be able to even see and speak to friends and relatives all over the world. They're huge in our schools. They are constantly being used in every different curriculum area to help support children's learning and development. They're fun. That's a Guitar Hero shot, but technology has given us the opportunity to exercise in a fun way, play in a fun way, and not just sitting down and doing so, but also being active. It's given us a social outlet, particularly as children get older. They're becoming more involved in socialising with their peers, both face-to-face, but also on online technology. This helps them to be able to explore their identity. A lot of teenagers or young teens actually explore their identity online before exploring it in real life, which actually gives a good opportunity for them. They can actually use image programs and see what they look like with nose rings, earrings, tattoos, all sorts of things before actually going and doing that in real life. So that gives them, that's a big bonus. And it gives us information at our fingertips. There is nothing that we cannot find on the internet as a rule. It can be a social activity. The internet technology doesn't necessarily mean that you are isolated and socially excluding yourself from everybody. It can be used as a social activity as well, particularly parents and children using it together for learning purposes. And it helps parents educate children about social issues. With the rise of modernisation, we are constantly being presented with new social issues that we may not know how to manage. The internet certainly provides us handy tips and research to be able to help us manage that in an effective way. So what are the risks? This is really my research area. Identity theft. It's huge at the moment. People are stealing other people's Facebook accounts. They're snapshotting your picture, creating another Facebook account, and then trying to add your friends on their new network so they can do whatever they like under your name. Gambling, which we've heard lots about today. Financial hacking. I did some research with young children, and when I was interviewing them about their understanding of internet risks, I discovered that one child who was 5 had accidentally shared her parents' bank details, and they had been hacked and robbed via the internet. Consumerism. There is nothing we can do on the internet or gaming, anything that we are global. We're constantly getting bombarded with pop-ups and advertising. Even if you play a game, like I play Words with Friends, I didn't pay the $1.99 to buy it wholly, I just use it. And just about between each move, I get some sort of advertising. Online predators, grooming, pedophiles, stalking and trying to access children. Addiction, that's mainly internet addiction. Cyberbullying, stalking, much easier to follow your digital footprint than what people think. And my area of concern is the content, the type of content that children can access, and it's really difficult to police and control. And my particular area is sexy media. So sexual references in media have become omnipresent and have become more frequent, more extreme. The explicitness has become increased, and the frequency in relation to how often these images pop up. And media and marketing play a significant role in shaping and normalising sexualised presentation. So many sexual depictions in the media promote unhealthy sexual behaviours or represent traditional soft pornography, particularly in the music industry. So what we're seeing now, in the 1970s, for example, would be considered soft pornography in some of the dance moves, some of the costumes, and even some of the advertisements that we see riding around on the back of buses. Here's some examples. That's Rihanna. That's Justin Bieber advertising Calvin Klein underwear. Oops, let me go back. Lady Gaga, that's Lady Gaga at one of her concerts. There was a huge uproar 2 years ago when she came to Adelaide, and parents were taking their young children there because concerts aren't regulated and classified. So parents weren't expecting what they actually saw. This could be because they hadn't actually engaged with the music videos. They just listened to her lyrics. Her lyrics aren't that sexualised, but her music videos are. But nevertheless, it's probably not something you would be expecting to see. And of course, we've got Zac Efron, who can't be seen at any point of time with his shirt on. We have advertisements. So that's the Game of War advertisement, where the actual game of war, isn't sexualised, but the advertisement needs to be, for some reason, to market. Given that it's marketed mainly at children, it's really an unnecessary advert. Honey Birdette, they don't even need to go onto digital technology to have advertising in their face. This is a lingerie shop that has bondage type gear advertised in their windows. So children don't even need to be accessing digital technology to be exposed to inappropriate content. Movie Star Planet, there's a game designed for 8 to 12-year-old girls. It's basically it aims to promote quasi-teen activities. It's all about consumerism and looking sexy and getting boyfriends and going out partying. The Adventure Quest is aimed at 8 to 12-year-old boys. Not a bad game, other than the fact that every female character has to be presented in a sexualised way. They can't be presented in armour, they have to be presented with thighs and breasts hanging out. Fan fiction, this is a very common interest for children around about 12 to 13 years of age. They start Googling fan fiction. It's a bit of a trend. And it's basically anybody can write a fan fiction story about a particular celebrity. And it's actually, some of them, I specifically scrolled for one that was most sexualised, but this is some of the content that children can be reading. I researched in the area of music videos. So I viewed 439 music videos that were broadcast on PG and G-rated television. And I did that in 2013. So 55% of them contained sexualised content. The most prevalent ones were the ones that are also the most popular genres in relation to children's preferences. And the most sexualised codes were lyrics, dress and non-dance movement. So even though we would probably presume that the dance movement would be one of the highest depictions of sexualised conduct, it's actually non-dance movement that's more so. These are some of the images that I saw in 2013 on these PG and G-rated television. So that's Beyonce, Who Run the World. That's Beyonce, Sweet Dreams. Testing my memory here. Katy Perry, California Girls. This is another shot of Katy Perry in California Girls. That's Miley Cyrus, Can't Be Tamed. And Lady Gaga in Born This Way. Now, admittingly, that shot was only on screen very briefly. Nevertheless, it's on screen. As you can see, there's sex industry-inspired body stockings, dominatrix costumes, bondage-type apparatus, so steel nails, fetish shoes, pole dancing and women in cages. So you have to question, how do these images get broadcast on PG and G-rated television? The highest scoring artists were Beyonce, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga and Miley Cyrus. Now you might think, who cares? That was 2013, they've gone now. Well, they haven't. Both Beyonce and Miley Cyrus are currently touring, performing live, and Katy Perry and Lady Gaga are both working on albums which they're planning to release in 2016. So they are going to be back. As we know, media is a powerful influence on human behaviour. So viewers of medical series have a greater faith in the ability of doctors to be able to cure everything. Viewers of high crime television overestimate our crime rates and live in greater fear than non-viewers. And of course, we all know that play school teaches our children lots of things. This is a problem because Australian children engage quite heavily with the media. So there isn't much recent research in relation to children's engagement with media, but the most recent is 2010, that 8 to 17-year-olds engage with media 4 hours and 49 minutes per day. So this can be engagement through school, it can be engagement through recreation, it can be watching TV, but nevertheless, they're on media for quite a big chunk, and one would presume that that would be more so given the age of that research. They're embracing new technologies, so TV is still the media that they engage with the most, but they also engage with TV. They will actually look up TV programs on the internet, on their phone. So they're using a lot more different platforms to engage with media. There's a rise in technology ownership. So houses these days, many of them have several computers, 2 or more televisions, as well as access to mobile phones. One thing that I found quite surprising is children at around about 8, I think there's 25% of children around about 8 years of age have their own mobile phones. So this means that it's quite difficult for parents to be able to monitor their mobile phone use and what they access, because they can't be with them 24 hours a day. And young children are engaging with music media online. So 18% of 5 to 8-year-olds are downloading music from the internet, and 43% of 9 to 11-year-olds. So that's quite young. You would expect those sorts of percentages when we're talking about older children, but when we're looking at 5 to 8-year-olds and 9 to 11-year-olds, those percentages are quite high, given the content that they're going to be exposed to. Why is this a problem? Because of risk society theory. So risk society theory is basically theory that discusses with modernisation for our own comforts and to provide better lives, we create manufactured risks. So these are unforeseen, and they're given the absence of the historical experience, so particularly in relation to technology, we haven't been through, we're pioneering some of the risks and how to manage these. So we don't have that historical experience, so we're having to either predict these risks and try and prevent them from happening, which can occur in overestimating risks. But commonly, we have to try and manage the effect after the damage. Other theories in relation to how media is influential in children's learning development is cultivation theory. So that talks about individuals' perceptions, values, beliefs and agendas being shaped through socialising agents such as the media. Cultural spillover theory means that whatever children are exposed to in a particular context, that means that they try and justify them in another. So, for example, if we're looking at music media artists that dress in an overtly sexualised way, that cultivates children to adopt those values and behaviours, and they may use them in a different context because of this cultural spillover theory. They can justify that in a different context. And script theory states that scripts are created from the cultural milieu, personal experience or intrapsychic experiences. So these cultural scripts are observed by young children, and they adopt these behaviours because this is what they consider culturally valued. And it's if you're at a wedding, for example, you know that at a wedding you sit a particular way, you dress a particular way, and you behave in a particular way. So that's a script that children will be observing, and they'll know how to act in that context. Gender schema theory. Gender schemes are socially constructed. Again, children observe their own gender and identify what the role that a girl has or a boy has and how they should behave in their culture. And of course, social cognitive theory is established on observational learning. Now, although that theory identifies that children can pick and choose what behaviours that they imitate and what behaviours they don't imitate, nevertheless, it emphasises observational learning. And children commonly try to imitate role models that they value, and quite often these are media role models. Children are quite familiar with sexualised music media and music artists. In my research, when asking children what music artists they like, which music artists they like and what music videos they like, 52% of them had a preference for the music artists and music videos that had some sort of sexualised content. And when asked which music artists are the most popular, 62% of them identified music artists that demonstrated some sort of sexualised demonstration. Now, in that research, when I was doing my content analysis and when I was asking children what music media they engage with, which artists they like, etc. Some of the children identified music videos that I hadn't screened or previously previewed on the PG and G-rated television programs that I was watching. So they identified 34 different music videos that I hadn't previously analysed. 77% of those contained sexualised content. So they are engaging with sexualised music media. This is a contributing influence. I'm not going to blame media wholly and solely, but media is a contributing influence in shaping attitudes. So these children showed a preference for, they had to do a dressing dolls activity, and they had choices of very conservative clothing and clothing that drew attention to adult sexuality. 51% of children who dressed their dolls chose sexy clothing for girls as opposed to boys, and it was all based on appearance. So when they were dressing their doll, their female doll in relation to what clothes do you think girls should wear, 51% thought they should wear sexy clothing, and only 37% did that when in relation to boys. Research that was not my own, but in the US, found that 6 to 8-year-old girls showed a preference for sexy clothing and conflated that sexualised dress with popularity. So they thought that the more sexy you looked, the more popular you were. In my research, I asked children around questions about what do girls and boys like to do on weekends, how do they behave when they play with each other, how do they play, when they play in mixed gender, how do they play. Results from that research found that activities perceived as normal for 6 to 10-year-old children reflected quasi-teen behaviours. So they were saying things like, what do girls like doing on the weekend? Well, they like going to the mall. And yes, mall isn't an Australian word, so they've probably picked that language up from the media. They like shoe shopping and they like hanging out with their girlfriend or boyfriend. So these are 6 and 10-year-olds. Boys were seen as dominant in mixed gender play, and this was considered normal and appropriate. So when I asked them, when girls and boys play, who's in charge of the game, many of them said boys were. When I said who should be in charge of the game, a lot of them said boys should be. And they thought that was normal. And some of their explanations were because they're smarter, stronger, etc. Sexualised media also shapes children's body image. Children, through observational learning and all those theories, cultivation theory, etc., that I just talked about, children actually try to have a desire to look like particular role models. And some of the role models that they choose are media characters. 20% of children indicated they'd prefer an underweight body shape. And 8% of young children reported being highly concerned with their weight, and 95 of those reported making a lot of effort to look like same-sex figures in the media. So children are basing their body image on what they're seeing in the media. And of course, in the media, we are constantly disseminating this sexy, thin ideal for girls, and of course for boys, where the cultural ideal is a triangular shape, ab-ridden, buff, tanned male. I also had a look at observed children in a primary school disco context. And approximately 1/3 of children sort of presented in ways that drew attention to sexuality. So things like low-cut tops, mini skirts. Boys were wearing sunglasses, even though it was dark inside. Tank tops with the gaping hole down the side. Micro mini shorts, heavy makeup, jewellery. And the dance movements that they were displaying sort of were things that they probably wouldn't do based on their own accord. It's something that they've been exposed to. Now, whether it's media, whether it's dance classes, whether it's watching their older siblings, nevertheless, they're doing things like self-stroking, rotating shoulders, rotating hips, thrusting their breasts, moving bodies up and down with their legs spread. That's a hard one to try and describe in language, but they're basically moving their bodies up and down with their legs spread and self-stroking, etc. Pouting lips was another big one. Boys weren't as active in doing that, but they were very much active in pulsating their crutch or thrusting their crutches. And I think that could have been some sort of influence because the song Sexy and I Know It by LMFAO was quite big at the time, and they do that very much so in that video clip. Now, whilst many of the behaviours and dress that I observed can't be identified as direct imitation, some could. So we had some children, when the song Single Ladies came on, they were doing the hand movement of, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. They were doing those hand movements. We had children dressed up in the fedora hats. The love heart symbol from Justin Bieber's Baby. So this means that children were exposed and actively imitating what they had seen. Yes, and we did have children pulsating their crotches at the same time that the band LMFAO were doing it on Sexy and I Know It. That song actually managed to get most of the children up. During the disco context in all cohorts in both schools, mainly the girls were dancing with a few token boys. As soon as this song came on, the dance floor became quite full. And I did see one child dressed like Michael Jackson, to the degree of having the white sequin glove. This is a concern. So children are imitating that. Now, whether they're consciously imitating this or not remains to be researched. But there are concerns that are being raised in the US and Australia in relation to children imitating and demonstrating sexualised behaviour. So in the US, children engaging in sandwich or lap dancing. So sandwich dancing is when there's a girl dancing and two boys come and thrust their bodies up, one front, one back, and dance with her in the middle. And freaking, which is grinding against each other in a simulation of sexual intercourse. So a bit like dirty dancing. Teachers, counsellors and school officers are concerned about displays of sexual behaviours, sexual activity and sexual harassment in primary schools. So this is becoming a growing concern both in the US and in Australia. Girls as young as 8 are starting to engage in sexting. Most commonly it's topless or it's wearing very limited amount of clothes and expressing sexualised language. There's an increase in referrals for problematic sexual behaviour. According to Joe Tucci, some were victims of sexual abuse, but a growing majority were not. So he's now saying that when he's interviewing children around sexualised behaviour and asking them where they get these ideas from, they're actually pointing to the media. So some children are getting these ideas, are victims of sexual abuse, but some of them are actually just trying to imitate media. If we don't do anything, this is only going to escalate. Some of the research with adolescents, specifically in relation to their exposure to sexualised media. So this is sexualised music videos, sexualised games, have found that the adolescents that engage or view sexualised media and engage with sexualised games have engaged in sexual activity at an earlier age and are either victims of or perpetrators of sexual coercion. These adolescents suffer with body dissatisfaction. They're constantly comparing themselves against these sexy ideals that they're seeing in media, which is causing huge implications in relation to their mental health, dieting, eating disorders, etc. Dines found that men in particular are showing dysfunctional attitudes towards women. For example, sexual exploitation, desensitisation to sexual violence. So in her research, she asked college students if a girl was drunk and passed out and a boy had sex with her, is he A, taking advantage of the situation, or B, raping her? And the majority said A, that he was taking advantage of the situation. Adolescents are now using sex as entertainment, so sexual transition where sexual gratification is the only tie, missing out on key emotional growth. Some of the new games that have arisen in adolescent parties are things like rainbow parties. Has anybody heard of those? You got strong stomachs? Rainbow parties is when girls all wear a different colour lipstick and they, I've forgotten the technical word, have oral sex with men. And the person who has the most amount of lipstick colours on the end of his penis at the end of the night wins. There's also research talking about adolescents enacting porn scripts. So adolescents are actually presenting at hospitals with damage caused through trying to imitate what they're seeing in pornography. So what can we do? What we can't do is stop technological advance. That's going to happen. It makes our lives more comfortable, and that's where we're heading. We cannot control media. We have media regulations in place, but they're so vague, and they're open to interpretation, which allows media regulators to explain away some of the inappropriate content that they're displaying. We can't monitor children 24 hours a day. Children have access to media at schools, in libraries, on their phones, everywhere, basically. They can go to McDonald's and get internet access if they have a mobile phone. So we can't monitor them, and we can't prevent them from being exposed to unsavoury media. When Sexpo comes to Adelaide, we see Sexpo plastered all over buses, trams and bus stops. Children ask questions. There's also other unsavoury media like the lingerie shop that I showed earlier. It's everywhere. We can't stop them from being exposed to it. But what we can do is, for parents, familiarise yourself with media in which children engage. So that involves having conversations with them, finding out what their interests are, what they engage with, what they like, why they like that, communicating with your children about their media habits, co-viewing, co-purchasing and co-playing with your children. So co-viewing, I know when my children are now 18 and 20, when they were around about 10 and 12, they wanted to watch music videos. I didn't want them to watch music videos because I knew that they were very overtly sexualised. However, it was impacting on their ability to socialise at school. They didn't have, they couldn't get involved in some of the conversations around music videos that other kids were seeing and wanting to talk about. So I sat down with them and co-viewed these music videos with them. I commentated all the way through each music video. It was probably really fun for them, trying to listen to music while I was talking the whole time. But I got my family values through. I posed questions about what they were wearing, the way they were dancing, why they felt the need to do that. I talked about commercialisation, marketing. I talked about stage persona versus what they usually dress and look like. Do you think that they do walk around? Do you think Lady Gaga walks around looking like this? Well, actually, she wasn't around in that time, but other music artists that dressed overtly sexual, I'd ask, do you think that they would walk around the streets like this? Why do you think they dress like that? It's to make themselves different and stand out from the crowd to market their product. I used authoritative parenting. So that's just basically being sensitive to the child's needs, setting reasonable expectations and age-appropriate expectations, being open, communicating openly with them, and being democratic, so not saying you can't do this because of this reason. It's actually saying to them, these are some of the risks that I see in relation to you engaging with this media. This is why I really don't want you to do it. And having a conversation about some of the risks and hearing their perspective as well is very important. So it gives them a voice, but it also guides them in what might be best for them. And that sort of parenting also promotes autonomy and self-regulation. If children are aware of why you want them to do particular things or don't want them to do particular things, they're more likely, now they might try it still, but they're more likely to have your voice in the back of their head while they're doing it. Teaching children how to become critical viewers. Like I said, when I was watching music videos with them, I would say, pose questions to them to get them actually thinking about why media has become so sexualised, why the purpose behind it, who they're targeting. Seeking resources. So the Australian Council for Children and the Media, I've got the little symbol in the corner there so you can find it easily on the internet, have great resources for content in media. So they have that for apps and they also have it for movies. And speaking out, lodging complaints and joining groups. But it's really important to know that when you are speaking out and lodging complaints, a telephone call goes nowhere. Someone will answer your telephone call, they will pretend that they care, but they don't legally have to record that. If you want your voice to be heard, you have to complain in writing, because legally they have to do something when the complaint is in writing. Now, I did this as a little self-experiment. I wrote a complaint to a broadcasting station about a music video that I didn't like, that I thought had tinges of, it had lap dancing in it, and it was on PG and G-rated television. So I wrote a complaint, and they sent back a response saying that they didn't see the same thing that I saw, they didn't interpret it the same way that I interpreted it, and that it doesn't cross or that it complies with all the current regulations, etc. What they didn't do is tell me that I could take it further to the Australian Communications and Media Authority. So that's another thing that's really important. If you're dissatisfied with with the response of a broadcaster, you can actually take it further. One of the key issues in relation to how media regulations don't get reviewed and changed is the lack of complaints. And some people, may complain via phone call, or they might accept the response of the broadcaster and not take it any further. It's really important to take it to the highest level, because that's where we get our data from in relation to how many complaints have been lodged and what needs to be changed. For educators, educators have things like policies in place like your digital citizen user agreement. So that, basically gives children guidelines around what they can and can't access, what they can and can't Google, and being a responsible digital citizen, not to cyberbully, netiquette, etc. We also educate children around critical media influences on gender role and self-identity development, and healthy perceptions of self and healthy behaviours. However, I'll show you on the next slide, a lot of that education comes too late. The other thing we need to do is keep up to date with current research about media. There's constant research occurring in relation to media. Some of it's good media, some of it's talking about education and how to use that in your settings, and others is research around some of the risks that media poses. So it's important to keep up with what's happening. So from Foundation, children explore media messages in relation to the purpose, whether it's to entertain, inform or persuade the audience, and identify the audience which the text is aimed. They create media artworks, considering the intent of their piece or audience they want to reach. So they start that from Foundation and they just keep building on that all the way through the years up until Year 12. In Year 1s to 2, children identify media messages which may influence decision-making around health, but a lot of this is targeted towards eating habits. So it's getting them to look at McDonald's versus Subway versus Coles fresh food. So it's getting them to look at health options and decisions around food. 3 to 4, they interpret and critically analyse media messages, such as identifying the attention and or truth behind media messages. But they're looking mainly at advertising. And in relation to things like music videos is a form of advertising, but children don't know that. They look at it as a program. They don't think critically enough that a music video is constructed to sell the product, which is the song. In years 5 to 6, children investigate influential variables on behaviours, self-preservation and decision-making, such as recognising the influence of media on personal attitudes, beliefs, norms and behaviours. They critique media images, messages and evaluate different messages, how different messages can be interpreted. In years 5 to 6, they're commonly looking at families and comparing what do families on TV look like as opposed to our family. So again, we're still avoiding some of these more controversial areas such as sexualised media. Now, obviously, you need to be teaching age-appropriate content to children. Talking to children in in foundation or grade 1 about sexualised media is inappropriate. However, we can be laying some of the foundation down in relation to media influence on children, in relation to how you dress. You can use Dora the Explorer if you must, but you can look at media characters and how they influence what you want to do, how you want to look, and how you want to behave. Exploration of the influence of media on children's gender role and self-identity development begins at around about grade 3 and 4 in the Health and Physical Education document, and it's facilitated through critiquing media text. It's not until 4 and 5 that children begin exploring the positive and negative qualities projected by celebrities such as singers, actors and sporting idols, and analysing the power of media and role models on influencing people's behaviour and choice. So my research has demonstrated that from foundation, from 5 years of age, children are already starting to take notice of media presentations. They're starting to imitate these. Whether they're doing this on purpose or not is not identified. Nevertheless, they're starting to imitate these. They're starting to adopt some of the cultural values of being slim, girls being sexy, boys being dominant. And we're not educating them until grade 4 and 5. And social norms do not get investigated until years 7 and 8. So my argument is we need to have a look at the research and identify at what ages that children are being impacted by these, and then review our curriculum to make sure that our curriculum aligns with when children are starting to be impacted and starting to engage with this. So to summarise, media is a cultural influence in which children and young people learn. That's a given. We learn from media. Like I pointed out earlier, viewers of medical series have a greater faith in doctors. Children believe what they're seeing on media largely as well. Media can have many positive influences on children's and young people's learning and development. Again, as I pointed out earlier, media is a fantastic tool to support children's education and learning, can be used in many creative and fun ways. Media is influencing children's gender role and self-identity development from an early age, and it's a family and social responsibility to help children make informed decisions around media, help them to critically analyse media, understand the influence of media on their developing self. So we need to guide them, educate them, and we need better regulations and law around media content and how to protect children from inappropriate content, particularly things like porn. Now, I recall having when I was teaching a reception class, I had a mum come in with her daughter. She was on the internet Googling Bambi the Disney reindeer. She got Bambi the stripper. So some of the things that children can accidentally come across as well, which means that we need, stronger regulations and laws in these areas. And some of the images I showed you earlier shouldn't be on PG and G-rated television. So this is a family and social responsibility. So we need to work collaboratively as parents, educators, psychologists, other professionals, lawyers and politicians to be able to address these problems. And my 50 million references so that you know that I did it properly. Okay, thank you.